Yesterday, we had a 6-hour live stream to cover all of the Iranian attack on Israel, bringing multiple videos from people inside of Israel, documenting and confirming the landings happening everywhere. We had a large attempt to spin all of this attack from, of course, mainstream media and Israel and the United States. That happened not only as a cover-up to undermine the scale of the attack coming from Iran, but that is also intended to lower the potential coming response from Israel. So far, the reports that we're hearing are that Israel will be responding, and I'm going to be talking about that in more detail in this live stream. Israel will be responding in a manner that will not lead the region to a regional war. Yesterday, during the live stream, I quoted two Israeli sources. One of them was Makor Rishon, and the other one was Ynet. One of them was talking about the fact that Israel does not need to conduct a response on the Iranian nuclear facilities, but only on the oil facilities potentially. The other one said, well, no, I don't need to attack their oil facilities or their nuclear facilities to have a strong blow. And that is coming as a way to take down the tone slightly. If you recall in April, when there was a response that was not declared by Israel on Iran following the Iranian attack, the historical Iranian attack on Israel in Operation True Promise 1. Yesterday was labeled True Promise 2. Back then, there was a small attack in Iran that some Iranians documented. And again, we showed these footages coming from Iran at the time. Very low scale, nothing significant, really. In a way, Israel could have potentially conducted that operation to say, well, we did respond, but we're not taking any responsibility because we don't want to drag the region to a larger war. That's only due to the United States. By the way, if the United States is interested in an all-out regional war or potentially World War III, they can do that. And it's not beyond the United States. The United States is behaving recklessly all across the world. What they're doing in Europe, what they're doing in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, Latin America, for such a long period of time. Now, this is coming from Israel because of supposed pressure from the United States. And again, when we talk about supposed pressure from the United States, you can take everything with a pinch of salt. The United States claimed that they had pressure on Israel when it comes to the negotiations, but we saw them sending them everything that they need when it comes to weapons, when it comes to arms, when it comes to money. But when it did come to that response back then in April, because we need to compare the two to try and establish where we're going. At the time, Biden told Benjamin Netanyahu, we had a successful interception campaign in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, with at least 5 countries reportedly participating at the time. The Jordanian government, the British, French, American, Israeli. Reports said that Saudi Arabia and UAE could have potentially taken a role as well at the time. And that's what we had. It didn't lead to a regional war at the time. So although Israel is a bloodthirsty nation that craves more and more destruction, there is a limit when it comes to the United States. Today also, although the European governments, in a typical manner, genocide sympathizing, genocide supporting, they were condemning Iran, although Iran practiced a very professional manner of self-restraint for such a long time. They even said that we did not retaliate to the assassination, the criminal terrorist assassination of Haniya in Tehran, because the Americans told us, give us a bit of time, we'll have a ceasefire. And again, Israel has had so many ceasefire opportunities that they constantly went against time after time. Guterres today is saying Israel is refusing a proposed ceasefire coming from the United States, France, and a couple of other countries as well. And then Israel is saying we're banning him from coming to Israel. and that he's anti-Semitic and the organization is anti-Semitic and all of that talk. So Iran acted in a very well calculated manner. They said we targeted military locations, things to do with security, and locations where Israel houses tanks, according to reports and confirmations, that we got from the IRGC senior figures when it comes to that attack yesterday. It was a big success for Iran. Hardly anything was intercepted. There were a few individual interceptions based on all of the footage that we analyzed, but the vast majority, I mean, approximately 90%, landed according to all of the footage that was published and analyzed at the time. And don't forget, there is a heavy reliance in these circumstances from individual recordings. Why? Because Israel banned people from taking images. The army warned people, although they didn't listen. They warned people, do not take images, don't take videos, do not help the enemy. Why? Because they don't want Iran to know that these missiles landed, and of course they don't want to portray an image of victory for Iran after this unprecedented attack. So far, of course, Israel said we're going to respond. We're going to respond in a strong manner. Iran said if they will respond, we will respond violently. We had confirmation from the IRGC that they will destroy the Israeli infrastructure if Israel attacks them now. And when we say infrastructure, that means electricity, airports. They can target everything in Israel without being intercepted. Yesterday, we had a combination of supersonic and hypersonic missiles landing on Israel, and they, again, were ineffective when it comes to even the Arrow 3 system, which is the most advanced anti-air defense system that Israel has. David's Sling wasn't effective. And of course, the Iron Dome wasn't effective whatsoever. It was a big blow for Israel, a big humiliation. And Iran acted again in accordance to international law, by the rules, unlike Israel. Israel, they commit, and then again, that shows you how hypocritical the Western leaders are when they went out and condemned this attack, because this attack was focused on military and security targets that are used to conduct war crimes from. The Nevatim base, it's the base that Israeli pilots launch their fighter jets from to commit a genocide in Gaza and cause destruction. And after the Iranian attack, Israel indeed responded. How did they respond? They responded by targeting a school housing refugees in Gaza, killing over 50 women and children and innocent men. Nylon tents. Why? Because they are cowards and they are bullies against civilians, against the weak. Yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu himself was shaken. We showed the video of Netanyahu when he was reading speeches. The man was shaking with fear. Everyone was in a state of fear. Why? Because when they're faced with the reality, when someone comes and confronts them, they're cowards. And now we had a very intense day in Lebanon. I'm going to be talking about this and about the potential things moving forward. But one of the things that I will be talking about, Hezbollah. But before I do that, I actually wanted to share a video. You know me, I don't like mainstream media. I do these videos because of the level of propaganda and poison on mainstream media. Mainstream media is mostly controlled by people. Well, firstly, Rupert Murdoch, who's a massive Zionist, he controls a lot of the media. And then you have, of course, you know how they operate. Money, greed, and people with interests who in many cases support Israel. And I don't want to give them legitimacy or, airtime too much. But this interview of Sky News with Professor MOHAMMAD Marandi had to be shared in all honesty. So I'm just going to share this video with you quickly in case you haven't seen it, of Professor Marandi literally dismantling the CNN.
Well, Professor Mohammed Marandi from the University of Tehran joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us, Professor. I just wonder, first of all, what has Iran achieved by this attack on Israel? Very few of the missiles got through. It, in effect, failed. Many people are calling it a humiliation for Iran.
I think that's a lot of wishful thinking on behalf of you and your colleagues at Sky News. It was a massive blow to the Israeli regime. And the history of this conflict doesn't go back to last year. It is 76 years of ethno-supremacism, ethnic cleansing, and this is a racist regime that you support. What the problem is that you cannot recognize that the difference between you and us is that you support racism and racial hierarchy, and we reject it. And the Israeli regime, if they dare strike back at Iran, we will hit them much harder next time. We will beat them into submission.
Well, they will strike back, won't they? No sovereign country can put up with having 180 ballistic missiles fired at them. So they will hit back, they will hit hard, and they could well hit your nuclear facilities, your oil production installations. They could cause Iran serious damage.
Listen, instead of the rhetoric, be real, because you're misleading your own people. Iran has countless underground missile sites with hundreds of thousands of missiles across the country. They were made after the US invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan to deal with a potential war with the United States. So this puny regime, it is not a state, it is a colony. It is a racist, ethno-supremacist colony which the people call themselves the chosen people. Unlike you, we do not believe in chosen people. And the Palestinian people on that land who've been displaced and pushed into Gaza and who've been slaughtered regularly over 76 years, we will not stand for that. All people in the whole of Palestine must be equal. The Israeli regime, if they strike Iran, we will hit them much harder next time. And they can pretend that they got away, but we hit them very hard last night. We hit their bases. And unlike the Israeli regime, which constantly carries out slaughter and genocide and is carrying out a Holocaust in Gaza, we struck their military targets because unlike you, we actually care about human rights, not you.
Professor, let me just say that we're on the verge of an all-out war, or certainly a war between Israel and Iran. It could be a war that Iran loses. If Iran does lose that war, do you think that the current Iranian regime could survive a defeat? Because that is if what you say is right, and Iran is going to hit back even harder, that could be where this all ends up.
Iran will not hit back harder. Iran will hit back much harder. The head of the Iranian forces says Iran will target and destroy all of the Israeli regime's infrastructure. This was the tip of the iceberg. Iran will lose no war. The Israeli regime will. It is time for you and others to end your racism and to end your support for the superior race and to accept that all people in Palestine have equal rights and the Palestinian people have a right of return. Jews, Christians, and Muslims are equal. Unlike what you say, they are equal, and we will accept nothing less than that. The regime must go, and all people must be treated equally. Right. And if the only thing, there's no doubt that Israel will lose, but the only variable here is the United States. If the United States gets involved, have no doubt, the U.S. will be swept out of Iraq by the Iraqi resistance, and all its assets in the Persian Gulf will be destroyed. All those regimes that U.S. bases will be destroyed, and the oil and gas markets will cause a situation where the global economy will collapse and millions of people will be on the move. So be careful about making stupid mistakes, and the West should stop with its arrogance and get real for once.
I had to share this because it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant work from Professor Mohammed Marandi. Barakallahu feek, God bless you. Professor Mohammed Marandi. I just had to share that with you. Secondly, I wanted to go through what happened today in Lebanon. So, yesterday, there was a confirmation coming from Hezbollah that Israel did not get in 1 centimeter into Lebanon. But today we had a small groups of Israeli commandos, elite units going into Lebanon, and boy, was it a day! And boy, oh boy, did they receive some punishment for going in. They admitted, and listen, I have a very thick line under admitted. And again, comes to Israel, compulsive lies. If you take, someone's words with a pinch of salt, you need to take their words with 2 bowls of salt and 2 bowls of extra hot pepper. They admitted that 38 commandos fell casualties and 8 were killed, meaning the number could be potentially much higher. And Hezbollah approximately had 27 operations against them. That's as they were moving in, including targeting tanks, targeting forces inside Israeli territory after monitoring them, direct engagement in battles with some of them, having an ambush, a house booby-trapped completely, the full force inside it gone, done, neutralized, and also taking down an Israeli helicopter. So they're saying we want to invade Lebanon. After the assassination of Seyed Hassan Nasrallah, that's it. People started talking. There was a massive campaign. People started talking about the day after. Of course, Iran betrayed you and all of that talk that we used to hear, of course, at the time from the Zio mouthpieces. And they were talking about the day after. Israel is going in. They had dreams of probably establishing a new kind of South Lebanon army like they had the South Lebanon army when Israel used to occupy parts of Lebanon. And maybe appoint a new president or prime minister that is completely under Israeli control. But that's not happening, and we are seeing the manifestation of resistance and of the wishes of Seyed Nasrallah himself of, well, I wish you could come to Lebanon, come in to Lebanon, and basically see what we have prepared for you. And again, the mere decision from Israel to go and occupy or try and invade Lebanon is beyond comprehension. You're talking about a country that constantly withdrew from one place in Lebanon back into Israeli territory up until they were almost fully expelled. Well, fully, apart from the fact that we still have territories that are in dispute, and suffered so many casualties previously, with many of their troops on the ground confirming that, going to Lebanon is ineffective for us. We know if we go there, we're going to go back in coffins. And now they're seeing the coffins. Now they are seeing the coffins. So I'm going to share a few of the details that Hezbollah shared when it comes to their attacks that they conducted on Israel today. Again, approximately almost 30 confrontations or attacks, and they said, epic confrontations, the Islamic resistance confronts the enemy's incursions with explosive devices, ambushes, and direct engagement, killing and wounding dozens of Zionists, inflicting several casualties among them, and the clashes are still ongoing. This morning, Wednesday, the Islamic resistance in Lebanon confronted an Israeli infantry force that tried to infiltrate the town of Adaysa from the direction of Khilit el-Mahafir. It clashed with them, inflicted losses on them, and forced them to retreat. They also said that the Islamic resistance fighters detonated a special explosive device, killing and wounding all members of an Israeli force trying to bypass the town of Yarun in southern Lebanon from the direction of the forest. At 2:30, the Islamic resistance fighters detonated a bomb that had been prepared in advance against Zionist infantry force that tried or had infiltrated the house in the outskirts of the town of Kafr Kila after monitoring and surveillance, and before they rained down a barrage of machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades, killing and wounding its members. When an enemy Israeli infantry force attempted to infiltrate towards the town of Yarun from the direction of the Sally's Heights, the Islamic resistance fighters detonated an explosive device at 5:40 on the advancing force, which resulted in deaths and injuries of its members. So you're talking about multiple attacks, and we're going to go as much as possible from them. At 5 o'clock, the Islamic resistance fighters in the air defense units fired a surface-to-air missile at an enemy helicopter in the airspace of Bet Hillel settlement, meaning this is technically Israeli territory, forcing it to leave immediately. Since then, no helicopter has appeared in the airspace along the Lebanese border with occupied Palestine. They got the message. And one thing before I continue, by the way, there were reports from journalists, of course, and reporters on the ground in South Lebanon that following the Iranian attack yesterday, the Israeli Air Force had much less activity in the airspace of Lebanon. Again, not to say that, they destroyed, the majority of the Air Force or what have you, but that could be linked with at least some damage happening to the Israeli fighter jets, or at least some of them. Listen, Israel confirmed that some of the missiles landed. And again, they're trying to hide as much as possible. The missiles that we showed you yesterday, they were landing, a lot of them were landing on the Nevatim base, which is one of the main Israeli bases, and another base, Hatzerim base, I think, if I'm not mistaken, alongside a couple of other locations. The level of missiles that landed, and when we say landed, Hezbollah, not Iran, when they posted a video of their drone monitoring Israeli bases, they were detailing which unit does what and what is housed in each unit. So they almost knew where people change their clothes in the base, meaning Iran has that knowledge too. So if Iran directed its missiles at the places where they keep their fighter jets, then you're talking about a lot of damage. There were unconfirmed reports from Iran that they took down, or targeted at least, at least 20 F-35 fighter jets. And you're talking about large numbers. And F-35s are the most expensive, most advanced fighter jets. I think Israel might have probably over 35 or so, meaning they could have taken the majority of their fleet. But again, that's not confirmed. These reports came from Iranian sources online. But again, unless either Iran or someone from the resistance sends a drone to monitor what's happening there, we wouldn't be able to find out this information. All we know is that reporters who are not linked with Hezbollah or Iran confirmed that after Iran's attack yesterday on Israel, there was less activity from the Israeli Air Force, which could mean that the Israeli Air Force had some attack and there were potentially some losses happening when it comes to the Israeli Air Force. The report from Hezbollah continued when an enemy Israeli force moved east of the town of Marun al-Ras at 6:20. The Islamic resistance fighters showered it with a barrage of machine guns and rockets, and the clash is still ongoing. At 6:50, the resistance targeted 4 Israeli enemy forces while they were moving inside the Shtula settlements with rockets, and they were directly hits. Again, Shtula, you're talking about Israeli territory. So Shtula and the previous location that we spoke about a couple of minutes ago, some of these attacks are inside of Israeli territory. So what Hezbollah are doing in effect is not only waiting with the ambushes and everything when it comes to Lebanese territory, but are actively targeting the forces on the other side. And the day before, 2 days ago, they actually launched approximately 32 Katyusha missiles on soldier gatherings preparing to invade Lebanon. At 7:30, the Islamic resistance fighters targeted a gathering of Israeli enemy forces in the Afdon area east of Naharia with a rocket salvo. Again, that's Israeli territory. At 8 p.m., the Islamic resistance fighters targeted a gathering of Israeli enemy forces in the Rosh Pina settlement with a large barrage of missiles. They're quoting here, of course, Israel saying that, or admitting that 8 soldiers were killed, including 3 officers in the clashes of Hezbollah on the border with occupied Palestine. They're saying 7 others were injured, but I think this report probably came up earlier on because Israel confirmed that 38 in total were wounded. They added, the enemy said, the enemy army said that the confrontation with the Egoz unit took place inside a building and the injured soldiers were pulled out under gunfire and missiles. Hebrew media reported that there are initial reports that 20 soldiers were killed and wounded in an ambush prepared by Hezbollah in the town of Adaysa in southern Lebanon, some of whom are in critical condition. The media pointed out that the occupation aircraft transported wounded soldiers from the army to the hospitals after a security incident on the Lebanese borders. It explained that the Beilinson and Rambam hospital, as well as Ziv hospital in Safad, are still receiving wounded soldiers from the security incident in the north, and doctors are struggling to save the life of an injured soldier. And they are continuing with more attacks here. 550 bombarded a gathering of enemy forces in the Yara settlement with a large missile salvo. They continued in support of our steadfast Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, in support of their valiant and honorable resistance in defense of Lebanon and its people, and in response to the barbaric Israeli invasion of the cities, villages, and civilians. The Islamic resistance fighters bombed a group of rockets on the north city of Haifa, again with missiles, and then Neve Ziv. And then they targeted a large Israeli infantry force in the settlement of Misgav Am. You are talking about the largest day in terms of continued attacks when it comes to Hezbollah. Shomera barracks with a missile salvo. They continued. Avivim barracks, again, rockets as well. Large numbers of rockets. Admit settlement and Amiad base. So, the most intense day. In the south of Kiryat Shmoni this morning, the resistance fighters targeted the gathering of the Israeli enemy forces and artillery positions, achieving confirmed hits. They also targeted the Za'arit barracks with Katyusha rocket salvo, achieving a direct and accurate hit. And that they had confrontations in Adaysa and Marun Ras, like they mentioned earlier, and specified when it comes to the details of these attacks when it comes to Hezbollah in Lebanon today. So, and this is, by the way, a video of some of the helicopters, Israeli helicopters, evacuating Lebanon. And there's large numbers behind them as well, if you can see here again. So again, large attacks from Hezbollah today, and what has been confirmed to be the biggest day of confrontations or attacks coming from the Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon against the IDF occupiers. And it wasn't just with them. We also had attacks from Gaza. We had attacks from Gaza in Rafah, again attacking Israeli forces, and again in a location where Israel said it was a safe location. So, I mean, they not safe location. They said we dismantled them in those areas. So, how comes you're saying that and you're still getting hit? And again, with regards to the targeting, they are targeting simply civilians in Gaza. Yesterday, again, like I said, the response to the Iranian attack was an attack on a school housing refugees, mostly children, over 50 killed. Today, they also killed dozens of people. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the official numbers on day 362, you're talking about only today in one of the attacks, 9 people were killed, 23 wounded, with an attack on a school, 2 houses, and a graveyard, a cemetery. Last night, 51, like we said previously, 51, not 50. Houses, again, schools. And we're still seeing the same awful images coming from Gaza when it comes to the population and the civilians. And these were some of the, let me share this with you quickly here. Some of the attacks in Rafah. Again, look at the destruction that they're causing.
توكل على الله، اضرب على الديناي، هاي واقف في وجهها. الحمد لله يا رب، الحمد لله يا رب.
So, and all of that is in Rafah. And again, this is an area where Israel does not report a lot about. They're acting like hardly anything is happening in Gaza. Most of the focus is shifted to Lebanon. And like I said before, Benjamin Netanyahu is running away from Gaza to Lebanon to cover up the massive failures that he's having in Gaza. He had multiple declarations previously that he dismantled all of the Hamas forces in Gaza. Before going to Rafah, he said we dismantled 20, and once 18, and once 19. And then we only have 4 of them left in Rafah. And that's what you're seeing. That's today from Rafah. Again, at least, what was it, 2 tanks and probably 2 D9s. Bulldozers they're targeting, And we also had another ambush the other day. They destroyed completely 2 troop carriers. Each troop carrier houses at least 12 Israeli soldiers. And when it comes to the Merkava, at least 4 you have inside it. D9, 1 person. But again, you're talking about constant resistance to the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza who are committing a genocide against the Palestinian people. Meaning, well, you have no solution with Gaza. We spoke about a couple of days ago the fact that Israel is trying to legitimize now the presence of Hamas governance of Gaza. 1 year into this destruction, and after they told us they want to demolish Hamas, and now they're saying, firstly, there was one article, it was in Ynet at the time, that said Hamas is now controlling 2 million Gazans. And then we had another article saying that Hamas's military wing has been dismantled. They don't have military capabilities, but they do have presence over the ground, and it's not necessarily a problem for Israel for there to be a Hamas in Gaza. So you see how the tone is shifting? It's as if they don't stick to anything that they say, and nothing is genuine. Again, all of these initial statements, and I said that from the beginning of the war when they said we want to destroy the Hamas. That was a recipe for failure. Why? Because they said that before multiple times. We want to destroy and eliminate the Hamas, and nothing happened. And during the course of previous wars with Gaza, the Israelis started to say that, oh no, we'll harm their military capabilities. They no longer have long-range missiles. They no longer have strategic missiles, and what have you. Although now, even though it's the largest and biggest attack ever on Gaza, this is mass-scale destruction, war crimes. 10 months in, 30 days ago, they launched 2 missiles on central Israel, on Tel Aviv, meaning that they still have a strategic missile capability to attack deep into Israel, and they still have the fierce defense when it comes to Gaza, and continuously targeting Israeli occupation forces inside of Gaza. What does that mean? That means that the resistance is not going anywhere, and that also means that the constant use of force that Israel was used to all through its existence, and in many cases people were dying in silence, and for the majority of the time, really. Now you have everything a little bit more public because there's much more awareness. You have social media, you have people sharing stuff from the ground, and they don't control the narrative anymore. They have been revealed. Their true nature, their true state has been revealed to everyone. Before, they used to die, these people, without hardly any kind of repercussions. Why? Because, well, at least repercussions when it comes to awareness, you know what I mean? They would cover up everything. But now it's different. And it's also because Israel is used to this violent path, and it hasn't exhausted anything when it comes to political resolution. Usually, when you want to achieve an objective, which is a political objective, you have to exhaust all political or diplomatic avenues or ways to try and reach that objective. But Israel always chose the path of violence, and although they had many proposals now ever since the beginning to have a ceasefire. I mean, we had a temporary ceasefire just over a month in that Israel canceled, by the way. Yoav Gallant himself signed the restarting of the war because there were clauses in that ceasefire that they can have extensions for 3 more days at a time in exchange for a release from both sides and other conditions and further negotiations on how to deal this matter once and for all when it comes to Gaza. But Israel, of course, decided to go and continue with full backing of the United States, full complicity of the United States proxies as well in Europe and other locations as well. Meaning we have a defeat of Israel based on its declared objectives in Gaza. Therefore, Benjamin Netanyahu went to Lebanon to try and achieve an image of victory with very strong blows to Hezbollah, simultaneously with a massive number of massacres and the beginning elements of a genocide in Lebanon. 2,000 Lebanese have been killed so far. And trying to get an image of victory with the assassinations of top figures in the Islamic resistance in Lebanon, led of course by Hezbollah, primarily with the assassination of the late martyr Seyed Hassan Nasrallah. Now he had the Iranian blow. So up until Sayyid Nasrallah's assassination, Benjamin Netanyahu, you can see, this smug smile that he has, and acting all, winning, and people were already talking, and some of his slaves in the Arab world were already talking about the day after, Hezbollah were done with them, and Iran betrayed you. Look, Iran sold you, and look, up until Iran bravely made the move quickly, swiftly, in a calculated manner, in a shocking manner, in a surprising manner, and they did not leave any time for anyone to expect anything, in a coordinated way that many people are still unable to resolve how they achieved this coordination so far. Minutes before the attack began from Iran, there was the attack. Who took responsibility for the attack in Tel Aviv, in Haifa? Al-Qassam brigades. These are people who came from the West Bank. Minutes before the Iranian attack, there is almost no way this could have been not coordinated. It would be a massive coincidence. Of course, Iran acted directly on its own, but the fact that someone did something to take away Israel's attention moments before, it's difficult to believe that it wasn't coordinated. And in case it was coordinated, that means Iran and the Palestinian resistance have ties and communications that are beyond anyone's understanding. Israel targeted Saleh al-Aruri, a senior figure of Hamas in Lebanon, in the early days of this war. This man was the link between abroad and the West Bank primarily. They targeted him, hoping that they would cut that link, cut this tie between the resistance inside the West Bank and Iran and other resistance fronts as well. But if this yesterday was coordinated, and again, I'm not confirming, I'm just sharing my view here, because it would be really, surprising if it just was a coincidence. Then that means that tie and that coordination hasn't been effective, and that's a problem for Israel. Israel has been working very hard on splitting the resistance fronts. What they've been trying to do for all of this time is, Hezbollah, stop the attack, stop your link with Gaza. This is one of the main things that they went out, by the way, on this massive campaign. Stop your link with Gaza. We have you as a different front. Gaza is something separate. Forget about it. Lebanon is a separate country. And of course, you had some people internally in Lebanon, like some of the other Arab states. Yeah, we have nothing to do with it. We don't want to get ourselves into trouble. Let the Palestinian people die alone, and we'll probably send them some coffins and maybe some medication when Israel allows us to, or some food to keep them alive. Malnutrition, but still alive. So Hezbollah, of course, took the decision to stay linked with Gaza. So did the other resistance fronts. So there were attempts with the Iraqi resistance that failed, and there were attempts with Yemen. What did they attempt with Yemen? They told Ansarullah, we'll legitimize you. We will make you the legitimate body here in Yemen. We will lift off any sanctions, anything, no problem whatsoever. Just stop attacking Israel. Don't recognize Israel. Don't do other many things. No, just stop your attacks. And they again refused, meaning the pact and the unity of the resistance fronts hasn't been shaken. It hasn't been shaken. And if yesterday's attack from Iran was indeed coordinated with the military wing of Hamas, then that's a massive blow for Israel. They were killing all of these people in the resistance to try and kind of limit their capabilities, but clearly they aren't reaching any of these objectives. Why? Again, because they are not targeting the root causes here, and they are only trying to achieve an image of victory. Of course, when it comes to Hezbollah, it's beyond it. They wanted to put them on their back foot. They wanted to create a shock effect internally to let the people think that they are cut off from the leadership and what have you. But even with that, they haven't affected their military capabilities. And Netanyahu's objective was to allow the settlements to go back to the north. He added that as part of the objectives. There were no objectives when it comes to the north when this began. All of it was restricted to Gaza. But then when he added this objective with Lebanon, he said these assassinations are because I want my people to go back to the north of Israel safely, and Lebanon needs to be disconnected from Gaza. And again, that didn't work, and it will not work, because the last thing that will happen now is Hezbollah breaking this tie. Well, they sacrificed with their top figure, right? They're not going to be able to go back now and retreat now. It's not going to happen. And again, it's typical for Israel. Listen, not that everyone in Israel thinks that way. Some people view it in a different manner. But when it comes to someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course he's enabled by the state of Israel, who was founded on these large mass-scale crimes. But Benjamin Netanyahu is a psychopath. He doesn't listen to people who are even near him or close to him. And he doesn't listen to people in Israel who have a very rich experience either in the army or in politics or in the security establishment, let alone the people, like, for example, the families of those who are kidnapped in Gaza, who are supposed to be the first thing on his mind. They're not the first thing on his mind. As a matter of fact, now they're kind of legitimizing and normalizing almost the fact that they might not get anyone back, especially following the statement that's not from Netanyahu, that from the IDF chief of staff, saying that we might not get anyone back from Gaza. So Netanyahu is running forward from his problems that he has in Gaza. He went to Lebanon to try and achieve an image of victory. He gained a level of increased popularity and somewhat an image of victory when he started taking off senior figures in Hezbollah, and primarily with the assassination of Seyed Hassan Nasrallah, up until the Iranian blow came and put everything in its place and put Netanyahu back in square one. People are looking at what he's doing. People are looking at the losses that we saw today from Lebanon, and people, at least anyone with an ounce of observation, are seeing that these confrontations that we spoke about in Lebanon today are only the tip of the iceberg, only near the borders, and only with limited attempts for an invasion in Lebanon. Will Netanyahu start to back down after this Iranian attack? Doesn't look likely. What he can do is potentially agree with the American pressure, if that genuinely exists, and there is more reason to believe that there is American pressure when it comes to a retaliation on Iran, because then the United States will be in an awful position and it will suffer tremendous losses. But when it comes to the other fronts, no one was stopping him from continuing with the plans that he had. doesn't mean that he is succeeding in those plans, but from going ahead with them. You have a person who is a war criminal, a man who is committing genocides against civilians, being enabled by the United States administration and the European establishment, NATO, potentially some Arab states as well. Some declared, some not declared. Yesterday we had Jordan helping Israel with some of the interception. Does that mean he will succeed in his campaigns even if he is still enabled and go and move forward? No. There is no indication that Netanyahu will achieve his objectives neither in Gaza nor in Lebanon, let alone with Iran.